In this video, we are going to write the JavaScript code and build all the functionalities of our app. So first of all, we'll need to embed the Google Maps JavaScript API, including the Places API. So we can go back to the autocomplete file and just get the script elements from there. So let's copy that somewhere in our index.php file. Okay, and also let's link this file to our JavaScript file by creating a new script element. Let's save and let's go back to the JavaScript file. So we're going to start by creating our map. So to save time, we can just copy the code straight away from one of the files we built earlier. Okay, so that's the code for setting the options, and that's the code for creating the map. Okay, now we need to make sure that we're linking the map to the right HTML element. So in our case, the ID of the containing element is Google Map. Okay, so if we save this and refresh the page, now we can see our map there. Okay, now to create the direction service and the direction renderer objects, and also bind this last object to the map, we can use exactly the same code we used in the direction service session. Okay, so we're just going to copy the same code and paste it there. Now we're going to move to the calculate route function. So in the same session, we created a similar function. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to copy this function and then we're going to customize it for our needs. Okay, so we need to create the request first. So that's what we're doing here. Okay, so the origin, we're gonna get it from the origin input. So we're gonna replace New York with document get elements by ID, and the ID of the origin is from, and then we get the value of the input using the value property. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for the destination, and we're going to replace from with to. Okay, now after creating the request, we're going to pass the request to the route method, and that's what we're doing here. Okay, so let's take out the console.log line. And now we are going to check if the status is okay. We're going to run some code, and if it's not okay, we're going to run some other code. So if the status is okay, we are going to change the HTML content of the output box to something like this. Okay, so let's copy that and let's access the output box using its ID, which is output, and let's change its HTML to something like this. So we're gonna place a div inside. Okay, so let's paste that text for now. So let's give this div a class alert info. Okay, to have this nice blue styling. Okay, so we're gonna replace the origin using the value of the origin. Okay, so that's documents gets elements by ID from value. Okay, so I need to replace all that. Okay, and let's replace the destination with the value of the destination. Okay, so we're going to have a dot there and a line break just before 2. Okay, now let's replace the driving distance with the value that we get there. Okay, and let's add a line break after the dots. Okay, and let's replace the value of the duration using the duration value. Okay, let's take out the alert line, and now our output box looks fine. Okay, now to display the routes, we're going to keep the same code. And if the status is not okay, we're going to have an else statement. So we are going to delete the route from the map. So to do that, we're going to use the direction or directions display object. Okay, and then we're going to use the method setDirections, and this time we're going to pass an object with an empty routes array. Okay, so if we do this, then all the routes in our map are going to be deleted. Okay, and then we want to center the map in London. So to do that, we're going to use the map objects and the method setCenter, and we're going to use the variable mile latitude longitude corresponding to London. Okay, and finally we need to show the alert message or the error message. In the output box. So we're going to set the HTML contents of the output box this time to a new div. Okay. So we're going to give this div a class alert danger, okay, to get a styling like this, okay, and let's write could not retrieve driving distance, okay, and finally we're going to create the autocomplete objects for both inputs. So let's go back to the autocomplete session and see how we did that. So let's copy this piece of code. Okay, so for each input, we're going to create one object. So for the first input, let's call it autocomplete1. And it's going to take two parameters, the input and the options of the input. So for the first input, we're looking at the elements of ID from. And for the options, let's keep the same options for both. Okay, now let's create the second autocomplete objects. So that's going to be input 2, and that's going to be 2 rather than from. And let's call this one autocomplete 2, and we're looking at input 2. Okay, now if we save and refresh the page, okay, so you can see our map there. Let's try something. Let's go from London to Paris. So our autocomplete is working. Let's submit. Okay, so we can see the route and we can see the output box. It still needs some styling. Okay, so the driving distance is in kilometers, but we would like that to be in miles. Okay, so let's go back to the request. Okay, and change metric to imperial. Okay, so let's save this and refresh. So from London to Madrid, and now it's in miles. Okay, now let's add some styling to the output box. So let's go to the CSS file, output box. So we're going to access the box using its ID, output. Let's censor the text using the text align property. Also, let's change the font size. Let's go for 2M. And okay, let's save this and check. Okay, that looks better. Now let's add some margin. So you're going to add a little bit of margin at the top and bottom. So that's going to be 20 pixels, and then 0 or auto for the left and right sides. Okay, we'll need a line break just before the driving distance. So if we go back to our code, The line break there. Okay, and now it looks better. Now let's try with one input only. You can see the error message. And now let's try again with both inputs. Okay, so if we miss an input, we see that we delete the routes, okay, and we center the map in London. And if we try with a good one, then we can see the routes again. And now our app is complete. Congratulations, you have just created a professional app using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap, and Google Maps APIs. You had a chance to review and practice many of the skills you learned in the complete web development course. If you created something different, then I would be very interested in seeing what you have done, so please share with me and other students. I look forward to seeing you finishing other projects and becoming a highly skilled and professional web developer.